Welcome back to Studio F. We're on Fast Times with Willy B. We'll be talking about Oscar-nominated Anatomy of a Fall. Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Wrestle!
Welcome back to Fast Times with Willy B. I'm Willy B, and I got Riley on the show today. Riley, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Willy B. It's been far too long since we've been on a podcast or show together.
Oh yeah, we go back to the college days where we were on sports podcasts together. So
Yes, many sports podcasts, many Mount Union Purple Raider games, and a lot of times in Studio M.
so now we're in Studio F talking cinema. So
It doesn't get any better, I don't think.
doesn't get any better.
I don't think it gets better.
So today we'll be talking about Oscar-nominated Anatomy of a Fall. Obviously nominated for several. The big one, Best Picture.
Yes.
A foreign film, but it still has, it's not your typical foreign film in the sense that you don't have to read subtitles the whole movie. There's a mix of English and French. You kind of get breaks that scatter throughout the film.
I think a lot of people, especially in the American market, have issues with foreign language films. I don't mind it so much. I do enjoy them, but there's a pretty good mix of English and French, so I think it's a little more accessible foreign languch than most people are used to.
This is a nice one to ease you in.
Yes, I think
You're not big in foreign films.
if you've never seen a foreign language film, I think that this is definitely the best thing to start with. It'll get you into the market and interested in other foreign language films.
For sure. So it's a crime psychological thriller directed by Justine Triet. Sarah Holler is the main star of this film.
Sandra Holler.
Or Sandra,
Yeah.
sorry.
You're good,
Sandra
you're
Holler.
good.
Same name as her character in the movie.
Correct, yeah.
She's actually nominated for Best Actress as well, so that's one of the other ones that it's under. Swan Marlowe is her representative in this movie, and then her son Milo Machado Graner is also worth noting. Great child performance.
Definitely.
But obviously in the American market, not a lot of known names in this film, but I thought everybody in this film carried their weight.
I think that any actor or actress in the film, you might be able to see him in an American market film within the next few years because this is going to attract some viewers. I think that this is going to get some people into theaters or watching it on TV at home. And I wouldn't say household names, but these could be people you see in movies that make big box office showings for sure.
For sure. So we'll hop right into the good, and there's a good amount of good to talk about in this film.
Yeah.
We've already mentioned one. The performances across the board were phenomenal. Great child performance from Milo. Sandra Holler nominated for Best Actress this year.
Deserved.
So obviously she put her best foot forward. Even a bunch of the other supporting characters. I thought everybody carried their own weight very well in this movie, and I don't think that was a bad performance.
I agree. I think all of the actors and actresses kind of had the same mission and goal in mind. And it's hard to get everybody on the same page. There's a lot of great movies where one performance just feels kind of not in the same vein as the other ones. But everybody knew their mission was to be able to cut the air with a knife. Yeah. And it carried over well in the film.
Yeah, we can talk about the tension. There's a good sample size of movies that, and directors, one of my favorite directors when it comes to that feeling of tension and suspense is David Fincher. But this movie did a great job, and you said it, with just using like created tension that you and I would find ourselves like sitting on the edge of our seat, in this crime courtroom drama thriller.
100%. I think if you like 12 Angry Men, which you've got to watch, Willy,
I know,
you've got to do a 12 Angry Men review now.
Yeah.
But if you like those courthouse cases, 12 Angry Men, Primal Fear was another one. I didn't watch it, but Women Talking is one that a lot of people really drew to.
A Few Good Men is one of my favorite courtroom dramas.
Yeah.
Thrillers.
I think that if you're into the suspense built without violent bangs or intense violent situations, action, this is the perfect movie to really draw into that intensity.
Yeah. And it was cool, too, seeing the, not typical courtroom setting we would see in a movie here in America, because they're going through the French judicial system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see how things work there. Kind of like a panel, or the board, they say, with the judge in the middle, defense on one side, and it was cool to see. It was cool insight. We were both kind of chuckled at. We thought the apparel was a little weird, but
Agreed.
Obviously for that's normal for the French. But like I said, it was cool insight into the French judicial system.
The dress and wear of the French judicial system is much different than what we expect here, and it definitely comes off as a little silly and old, I'll be honest. But man, the court scenes flow at a faster pace than anything we could represent in America, because it's almost this open dialogue between the two sides. There's not a prosecution, make your case for 10 seconds and then silence. Defense, make your case for 10 seconds and then silence and a break while one gets permission to speak. You just kind of go in, and the judge doesn't stop either the prosecution or the defense unless there's something said that she wants to interrupt.
Well, even like, you watch a bunch of American court dramas and you watch American court on, TV, a lot of objections. You didn't see that. You didn't see that.
The objections in this movie are more so counter arguments. Yeah. Instead of it flows right into, well, this is what we bring up and this is why the discussion needs to steer in a different direction. And the judge makes split-second decisions to either let that flow or to stop it. Yeah. So I don't know. I really thought that the court case itself was a lot more fast-paced than what you get over here in American TV and movies.
Oh, for sure. We both kind of had, going into this one, we saw the 2-hour, 31-minute runtime, and we were like, okay, this could go one of two ways. It could be very well-paced, have us on the edge of our seat the entire film, or, sometimes with courtroom dramas, it happens to the point where it starts to drag. Some scenes don't really fit. I think we can both agree the pacing in this film was phenomenal.
The pacing was probably one of the best elements. I don't think that there was a moment where I got to take a deep breath and relax. From the first maybe 3 minutes of the film, you're like, oh, it's a really beautiful setting. It looks really good. You're in the French mountains. It's snowy. It's gorgeous. The sun's going on a walk. Yeah. And from then on, there's not a moment for you to go, I'm glad that scene was over. It just keeps going.
5 minutes in the movie, we have the kill or the death or the suicide, whatever. Yeah. You don't know what it is at this point.
It's our main character's
husband,
the martyr,
is dead. Mm-hmm. And you and I both were like, that was really quick for a 2.5 hour movie.
The conflict does not shy away. Immediately, it just dives you into the death is here, and here comes the fallout. I mean, I've never seen a conflict initiated so fast in a movie. I don't think it was very, very quick.
No, that was my biggest worry, honestly, was when they did it that quick. I had no problem doing it that quick. It actually kind of, surprises you. It adds to that element of tension, but I was worried, how slow is this movie going to be? And it still kept a very good pace.
I think the best analogy is when you're starting a weed whacker, or for those of you who call it a weed eater, sometimes it takes a few pulls on that ripcord to get the engine to fire up. Mm-hmm. This was half a pull, and the engine was spitting the blade full speed already. Yeah,
for sure. Pacing was great. The conflict was there before we could even finish tying our shoes if we were putting shoes on. But, diving into the court case and like some elements of it, leading up to the court case, we kind of get this drawing from our defense attorney, and it was a cool drawing. It's just a scene that stuck out to me. But later in the court case, we get an audio recording that was a recording of an argument between Sam and Sandra, Sam being the deceased and Sandra being our main character. And through this audio recording, we, the viewers, obviously get a visual glimpse into what this fight looked like, what this argument looked like. And I would probably say that was the best scene in the movie.
I agree. That scene, we both looked at each other at the end of the scene, and I said, that was it. That was the best part of the movie. And I think what really made it so special is they tease that there's an audio clip of an argument in the movie. We go into the lead up, the very beginning of the movie. Nobody knows that the clip exists. And then they're not sure if she's going to be indicted. And ultimately she is.
Because of this clip.
And when they're announcing the indictment is when we learn, and she learns, that Sandra learns there's an audio clip of the argument that happened the day before her husband died. And it kind of builds that suspense and that urge to go, what's on the clip?
Yeah.
When are we going to hear the clip?
What's on this USB drive?
Yeah, and I think I'm correct in assuming that we were both thinking throughout the movie, when's the clip going to come up?
Yeah,
because there's a lot of pork.
They go through a lot of evidence, which
it's generous.
Yeah, evidence throughout this court case, and the entire time, like you said, I'm sitting here and I'm like, did I just like imagine them saying that? Like, there's not actually a USB, and then when it starts happening, at first you're like, whoa, what's going on? Then you realize, because they keep cutting back and forth between the typed out notes of the audio, and us seeing what actually happened, and then you're like, oh, this is the clip.
Yeah.
And it's a really good scene.
It catches you off guard because the audio of the clip starts before we transition to actually seeing the fight.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily know that it started in the courtroom. It's just an audio, and you're seeing something, you're like, wait a minute, the audio is not matching what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Sandra and Samuel are sitting in the kitchen.
Yeah. And
a lot of demons are being uncovered. There's a lot of dust coming out from the carpet.
Yeah. And it's insane. It's one of those ones that you perk up, you know?
Yeah. What I think was the best part of that scene is it started to reveal motive and understanding for why both sides could be correct.
For sure.
Feasibly.
For sure. Why it could be suicide and why it could be murder.
Correct. And how she could have been controlling, but how he could have been creating this narrative of pain.
Yeah.
And blaming others, because clearly there's some resentment with her husband. To preface this, they're both writers. So Sandra and her husband Samuel are both novelists. And she's successful, but he's not. And it's important to understand that, because he brings up this very harsh resentment about her using one of the novels that he gave up on, essentially. He wrote it. It was great. She told him it was great. He gave up, said he didn't have enough time.
Yeah.
And that she was controlling him, and she turned it into one of her most successful novels. So, like,
which she does state that he gave permission, but he also brings it up in every argument. So you don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
Exactly. And that leads me to the reality in this movie is so obscure.
Mm-hmm.
And some things are true.
Yeah.
Some things are just blatantly false, and they get mixed up into lies. Mm-hmm. But there's a ton of gray area, red herring type stuff in this movie that you can't tell. You're trying to make up fact or fiction yourself, and it's impossible.
Yeah, for sure.
And the movie really plays into that well.
Yeah. And then, carrying on with this court case, we get another great scene shortly after this audio recording. And, this court case was supposed to wrap up on a Friday, and our judge announces we're going to, the son's going to come back on trial on Monday. So the case isn't over. It's still open. Don't talk about the case over the weekend, blah, 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 blah. Well, immediately after that, they go home, and he's like, I want to be alone. I don't want my mom here. And all you're thinking is, wow, he's going to say something that puts her behind bars.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, he starts feeding his dog Advil.
Yeah, he gives the dog aspirin.
Or aspirin, yeah. And it turns into this experiment to see if, some of these facts were lining up that would make more sense for his dad to have killed himself. And that led to, the car conversation. And this is when the case is blown up. Like, you're like, okay, you know the truth.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a cool concept because I didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't expect the son to be so intelligent in this movie. He's an 11-year-old boy. He was partially blinded in an accident when he was 4, and that's what causes a lot of the rift between Sandra and Samuel, the husband. And at 11 years old, he's got to be one of the most intelligent child characters I've seen in a while, and I appreciate that because not enough movies give credit to how smart our children are.
No,
they really have a good idea of what's going on,
especially when it pertains to loved ones. I feel like family.
I think so. I mean, kids aren't dumb. They have a good idea of what's going on in the house. They might not understand.
Kids do dumb stuff, but they're not dumb.
They might not understand the full context, but they understand, the temperature of the household. For them to have Sandra be the only one that knows her husband attempted suicide with aspirin. Her son
Connecting the dots.
connecting the dot that, oh, the dog was sick when my mom said that this generally took place in the time frame, to feed the dog aspirin to test this theory, to really decide, do I trust my mom?
It's almost killing the dog.
Yeah, I mean, almost killing the dog. The court appointed to help had to put salt water down the dog's throat to prevent the dog from dying. But man, talk about a crazy move by a kid to really turn the last rock over. That was awesome.
And then, you know, the other part about it that kind of blindsided me was after the death, you don't see much of Snoop throughout the rest of the movie. You see a lot of him in the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of just like not there anymore. And obviously there's a lot of court scenes and Snoop's not going to be wandering around the courtroom. But like even at home, you don't really see him. And then this experiment happens, you see him. And then, you know, we get our finale, which is the mother and son have this beautiful hug, kiss on the head. And then she goes to bed and Snoop jumps up. And I even leaned you and I was like, Snoop's the main character in this movie. Snoop's the guy, you know?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought too much about that, but it's true. When the plot begins to move uphill, Snoop is there. Yeah. And when the plot comes to its conclusion, he's the final piece of the movie. He's the final comfort. So that's good. I really do think that somehow the dog was a great side character in the movie as well.
Sure. Yeah, you don't think about, you know, the role pets have in movies and in life in general.
Biases aside, yeah, we all love dogs, but the dog's really good in the movie. The dog is good. Yeah,
great actor.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's his best supporting character nomination?
Yeah, come on. Can we even validate the awards knowing that the dog wasn't voted for best supporting actor?
Peaches not getting nominated for best original song, I thought was the last straw. This is the last straw.
Okay, but Peaches is a pretty good song.
No, I thought it should have been nominated.
It definitely should have been nominated. It should have been nominated.
But that's for another day, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good in this movie. I mean, obviously, on the technical side, another one that, I mean, you don't get nominated for Best Picture unless you do the technical things right.
Correct.
But great performances, an intriguing story, tension that you feel throughout your entire the room you're watching it, whether that's the theater, whether that's your living room. But is there anything you'd like to add in the good category before we move on?
Absolutely. So there's an interesting dynamic between Sandra and her lawyer. And that's apparent when he shows up at the house. Yeah. They give kind of an awkward hug, and she hasn't connected with him in a long time. This is the first time they've seen each other, and you can kind of sense something. You're like, were they dating in the past? Did he have an interest? Did she have an interest? What's going on? Now, there's many scenes throughout the movie where you can see that there's a connection there. There's mutual respect and some sort of affinity, but before the final day of the trial, they go home and they're both drinking heavily. And she can't remember herself from before. She's so consumed in this trial. And the lawyer drunkenly states that, you know, she was full of life and ambition. She had a motive, and he was in love. He was in head over his heels. So I think that's important. And it adds just another twist in a spider web of truths and lies and what's real and what's not real. And is he truly convinced that, you know, she's not guilty? Because to be in love with somebody kind of skews whether or not she's guilty or not guilty.
Yeah, for sure.
And at the end of the day, the movie never answers that question. It leaves it up to the audience to decide, do you think she killed her husband or do you not?
Oh, yeah, I for sure feel like this is one that, after watching you, I mean, obviously she's acquitted in the case, but you never really get that definitive evidence on whether it was suicide or murder.
And, I mean, the truth could be it's somewhere in between. I don't know that I have a conclusive argument as to whether I thought she was guilty or not guilty, but I thought it was a great movie. I thought that the moral dilemma is probably one of the best I've seen in a while in a movie.
For sure. So we can hop over to the meh. I feel like I know you've already mentioned how you felt vaguely to me before this movie, so I don't know if you'll have anything. And if you don't, argue with what I say. But for me, one of my mehs is it almost felt too real. It almost felt very documentary-like to me. And I don't know if it was what camera they used or just the camera angles, or even just the fact that we got like, depth in these court scenes. We got so much depth. It almost just felt like at moments I was watching the news or watching a documentary, and it didn't tarnish the movie that much for me. But I don't know, it was just weird at moments.
There are some news scenes. I agree. And the immersion almost feels to the point of a documentary or like a real life story.
Yeah.
Even though this is fictional, based off of a novel, it can suck you into the real life feeling sometimes. So I can understand how people could be hot or cold on that for sure.
And like I said, it's nothing that I hate because I watch movies. I watch biopics.
Yeah.
They're obviously based off real life, but it was just, I don't know, when you go into a movie that you know is like supposed to be fiction and you get that real aspect, it just felt a little weird. It felt a little out of place. And it plays a little hand in hand with my other meh, which is some of the camera shot, like some of the camera work. I wouldn't even say shots. I thought a lot of the shots were great. But there were moments in the courtroom, there were moments in interviews where the camera would just start zooming in and out, like they were trying to focus. And I wasn't a fan of that. It felt amateur almost.
I can agree with that. I mean, in a movie that's 2.5 hours long, it's really hard to get every frame perfect.
No, 100%. And that's why I'm putting it more in the meh, because most of, the shots and the cinematography and all of that were in that good category for me.
I'd agree. And I can agree that some of the camera work contributes to the feeling that it's almost a documentary or if it's too immersive. I particularly resonate with that meh take the most when they're having deliberations and cross arguments, cross examinations in the court, and it'll just randomly cut to Sandra and she'll stand up and just look flustered a little bit and start speaking or answering to questions. The cuts were a little bit abrupt sometimes there. Maybe that's where I'll give you the.
Some of the other ones too were like the camera moving back and forth. That made it feel more real too. Like rather than having a camera on this side and the camera on this side, and you're going back and forth by camera, this camera was actually moving. I don't know, just it's obviously a lower budget film, but it just felt weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I agree. I think that some of the camera shots are. What's the word I'm looking for? They're a little bit jumpy, maybe, or the trigger finger's a little too happy.
Yeah.
That's the best way to put it. It's
unstable,
It's similar to like a Wes Anderson problem. Like I love Wes Anderson's movies, but sometimes that camera moves so quickly it drags a little bit.
Yeah,
and it can hurt the eyes
for sure. That's all I have in the meh category, though. Did you have anything that stuck out to you that was neither good or bad?
I have had something come up that qualifies for the bad category, in my opinion.
Okay, then let's hop to the bad.
But nothing.
Kick us off, my friend.
Nothing in the meh category.
Yeah, what you got?
The bad.
The bad.
I think that by far the worst part of this movie or scene in the movie, and I'm glad that it wasn't very long. The judge decides that Sandra's son Daniel should not be present for one of the days of testimony. And she just is not listening to the kid, saying that, it would damage you too much. And I'm already damaged. But I understand why the scene is in there, because they're setting him up to have the final testimony.
Yeah.
And showing how strong and independent of a character he is, because he's going to brave the testimony. He ultimately convinces the judge to let him in. But I didn't like that scene.
Yeah.
I thought it was...
That was probably the most out of place scene, for sure.
It was the most forgettable, take it and leave it scene. I almost didn't remember it for the bad until you were thinking, what's in your meh category? And I was like, I really did not like that moment in the movie where the judge, who is really just a facilitator of conversation most of the time in the movie, is all of a sudden, the most powerful person in the shot. And it didn't work for me. That scene did not work.
That's fair. The only bad I have is during one of the interviews of Sandra, it goes back onto the camera again. The camera just zooms to where the entire frame is her mouth.
Yeah.
So, it's cut off, right here, and then, each side of the hairline and the chin. And you're like, what am I watching right now?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be remembering it incorrectly, but isn't her mouth just the only part in the camcorder, like side,
Yeah.
the side screen? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm watching it, and I don't know, for some movies that would work, but like for this crime psychological thriller, I'm like, what am I watching right now? Like, it almost took away from what she was saying because I was so hyper fixated on like, why am I looking at her mouth so intently?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that's really it. Like, there's, you know, I guess I could say the language barrier. I wouldn't put this in bad or meh or, you know, good. I think the language barrier hits me more than most, but not to the sense that like I would never give the movie a try or take away from its score in that sense. It hurts replay value a little bit, I'd say. Like, I don't know if I'll ever watch this movie again. I mean, I might revisit this again. Actually, it's a pretty good crime drama.
I think it's worth rewatching. Maybe not 3 months down the road or 6 months down the road, but
yeah,
in a year or two,
yeah, for sure.
You go back and you're like, you know, maybe if I rewatch this, I can unwrap a little bit more,
for sure,
and get closer to the seed at the middle of what really happened. You're never going to get a concrete answer.
Yeah,
but this is definitely a movie where you'll notice more the second time you watch it, the third time you watch it, than you did the first.
For sure. So we'll hop over to our final thoughts and rating. And what would you like to leave off with this film, and what do you give it out of 10?
So what I'd like to leave off about this film is I do think that the Oscars and the award season misses the mark sometimes. I hated Triangle of Sadness last year, quite truthfully. Not an entertaining film by any means for me. But this absolutely deserves a place at the awards shows this season. Sure. I thought that it was a really great movie. I think it stands up there with any crime, courtroom drama that you want to look at. And like I said, if you really want to get into a foreign language film or a film that builds that tension without crazy over the top budget or CGI, this is a great film to get into to test the waters of what you like and what you want to watch in the future. Yeah. I think I've settled on a 9.2. 9.2. I really put it up there for me in terms of movies I've watched in the past year and a half. This is going to be one of the most memorable ones.
Awesome. Yeah. For me, like I said, the language barrier hits me a little more, but I still love this one. This is right up there with Godzilla -1 as two of those foreign language films that I could really, get behind. I know last year or 2 years ago, I watched a movie called Hatching, and it seemed like it got decent scores, but for me, the language barrier really killed it. This one, again, you get that half and half. It doesn't do it there. Godzilla -1, completely Japanese, but what a movie. For score, I'm going to land on an 8.5. I thought this was a great film. It's really close to a 9 for me. I'd probably go upper 8, but I'll land on 8.5. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good. And I feel like this is also a movie on a rewatch. Could go up.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't think this is a movie that you rewatch and it goes down.
No, I don't think you'll ever think less of this movie watching it a second time. But I did just think we forgot one thing.
What's that?
The musical score in this movie is amazing.
Yeah.
It's really good.
There's not a lot of like what's the word I'm looking for? Diversity.
I don't think there's any vocal music in this movie. It's all instrumental or orchestral.
You get 50 Cent.
Yeah.
You get a
the instrumental version of 50 Cent's Pimp.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's actually goes down during the murder.
Yeah.
Suicide. Whatever you think it is.
During the death.
Yeah, during the death. And then, you get this reoccurring song that Daniel keeps playing on the piano. And, it's not really, you don't really get a score over top of, like, any scenes. It's more of, it's happening in the scene.
I think that the music really propels the feelings that the scenes are trying to build. And Daniel being partially blind, being the catalyst of most of the music playing, stepping up and providing that emotion, and that soundtrack is a great part of the movie. Yeah, I liked it a lot. I actually pointed that out a few times, Jay. We both forgot it, but I can't believe it. Yeah,
but yeah, there's a lot of good with this film. I definitely think that it's one that anybody that calls themselves a movie buff needs to give a try.
Agreed.
And I hope it's, like you said, it's a film that even if you're a little iffy on jumping into that foreign language film and that language barrier, this is a good one to get started on.
Agreed. It's the best kiddie pool.
Yeah. Training wheels.
Yeah, training wheels. whatever you want, the break on the skates. This is a foreign language film that'll really get you into foreign language films, I think, and open you up to a whole different genre of movies that you would have even thought you'd be interested in. So
for sure. That'll do it for Anatomy of a Fall. Riley, thank you for coming on, man. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. It's fun to be here. I was a little nervous, I'll be honest, but you settle in after a little bit. It's good.
It's going to be exciting to see where this one ends up in the realm of the Academy Awards coming in March.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, it's got my vote. If it's one of those movies that I don't know, there's other movies I'd probably put ahead of it. But if it wins, I wouldn't be mad in most of its categories.
I don't think it'll win Best Picture, but I do believe it deserves all the respect and love it's getting at the awards.
For sure, deserve the nomination.
I think it'll win at least one. It should win at least one award. It's deserving of that. It's a great movie.
We'll keep our eye out for Anatomy of a Fall. But again, thank you all for watching. If you like what you're watching, there's some other playlists and videos over here. Subscribe button up in this top right corner. Social links down in the description below if you want to follow. You're here. But again, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you all soon. Peace.